the old ways are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one system that's working the way that it was 20 years ago.
No.
And that shadow is kind of coming out. And I think as within the body, we hold trauma.
Yeah.
I think the earth has been holding on to our trauma.
Welcome to the Huffing Spirit Podcast, where we take you from the sacred to the profane, from the serious to the silly, from the outer to the inner, and from the guru back to you. Join your playful podcast guides, Alex Hindley and Natalie Dick, as they bring you back to a grounded and more authentic approach to spirituality.
It's back.
We're back.
Another live, lovely episode.
I know.
Lovely live.
We're going to be talking about a bit of a not lovely topic.
And we're going to try to do it as
but
comedically as possible.
And we're trying to flip it upside down, giving you perspective that it is actually beautiful.
Yes. Should we just get into it then?
Get into it.
This is our second time recording this episode. The first episode that we tried to record this is the collective fire episodes. Last time we recorded it, Natalie and I got off and we're like, it was too fucking heavy.
Yeah, we just didn't have the right vibe. So we put it in our back pocket and we're revisiting it 6 months later.
I think it's like 3 months later.
No, I don't know what time it is, what day it is, but here we are talking about a collective dumpster fire.
Yes. So why are we talking about this?
So, well, let's talk about what is the collective dumpster fire. And, when we are looking around at what's happening in the world, it feels like since COVID, everything has just amped up. Like the fear is so palpable. It's so thick. Like
politically, socially, economically.
Like financial systems are breaking, healthcare systems breaking. We're having Schumann resonance, which is like the electromagnetic field of the planet. It's shifting and changing. We're having wildfires, floods, like
hurricanes, tornadoes.
You name it. Like it's all happening on Earth right now.
Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
What is happening?
Ghostbusters.
So yeah, this is what we're calling the collective dumpster fire. And I think it's most people who haven't started their awakening process are really in the thick of the fear, right? They're really pulled into it. And I mean, I don't know anybody who has even started their awakening process or, already in it, on the fully through it, it's still really challenging to be a human right now on planet Earth.
Yes, which is where we all live, listening to this podcast.
Yeah, so planet Earth is just very overwhelming, and we want to give it a little bit of a perspective shift for those who are new to spirituality and really understanding cycles of energy, the death and rebirth process, and all of this. That I see the collective dumpster fire as humanity's full awakening process, and that the Earth is shifting and we have to let go of all of these old systems in order for the new Earth to kind of reemerge.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with that. The old ways are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one system that's working the way that it was 20 years ago.
No.
And that shadow is kind of coming out. And I think as within the body, we hold trauma.
Yeah.
I think the earth has been holding on to our trauma. And I think on some level, the earth is purging. And that doesn't mean that we're reframing this in a way that doesn't include the people that are affected by these natural disasters, the people that are affected by these systems that might be crumbling. So we're in our own death and our own rebirth process. But the wheels are falling apart because we're being called to reimagine a new world for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can't do it with the old paradigms.
No. And what, the old spiritual saying, and I think it's a Hermetic principle, it's like as above, so below. What's happening in the collective and all of this shadow surfacing is really this activation within each individual of their own shadow. And so while we're witnessing all these catastrophic events and it feels really overwhelming, it is actually the internal process and awakening of your own shadow that has been neglected for years. And so what's happening in the collective framework is mirroring what has to happen within us to literally let go of all of these systems.
And why we're talking about this is we have felt inclined, both Natalie and I, and what we're doing with this podcast and who we are as people, that like some people are having this conversation. A lot of it is coming off as like it's fear porn. It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
A different framework to that. You know, we're trying to give people a different frame or a different way of understanding all the craziness that could be going on. Because a lot of these systems are rooted in the I have to get mine before somebody gets theirs. It's the scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And we're shifting towards that abundance principle of like energy and everything for energy, power for everybody.
Yeah.
From above, for the people that hold the power, that might be activating them to clench onto it more so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's really what we're happening, and I think that's why we're doing this, is we're trying to give people a frame so that they don't keep subscribing to the fear channel the same way.
And I think that, like you said, like everybody is clenching in fear, and like it's almost like, well, and some people, some of us, we haven't been affected dramatically by any type of natural disaster. And for those who are just like, well, it hasn't affected me, you're not separate from what's happening in this world. We can't operate in this model of separation anymore. Like, it is getting closer and closer. All this chaos that is happening is becoming amplified and amplified. And I think with great purpose, it has to happen this way, because it's reaffirming the fact that we can't hide from this. Like, we're not separate from this. This is happening.
It's part of us.
It's part of us, and it's happening to everybody on the planet. And it's making such an internal shift within each individual. Like, I really think that people are really leaning into the spiritual process a hell of a lot more than in the last like 10 years.
The process, or are you talking like the
awakening?
Okay.
Yeah, the awakening process. So people are having a really hard time. They're like, what is happening to me? Like, they're having a lot of fears coming up. Like, who am I? These are really deep questions. They're like, I don't know who I am anymore. These are kind of the questions that people ask. You can call it midlife crisis. You can call it like the awakening. People are unfolding to the reality of who they truly are. But sometimes that outside collective dumpster fire has to activate some of that within each individual.
Yeah, and what's coming up for me as you say that is, you know, we say collective dumpster fire because it's a fun expression. And
Yeah.
I saw this meme where it was like somebody asked me how my life is, and it shows like a dumpster on fire.
Yeah.
It's literally going down like a floodline.
Yeah.
And fire is a catalyst.
Yeah.
You know, so especially spiritually speaking, the stuff that I've read, like the idea of hell didn't really exist. It was a newer concept. It used to be like there's a lake of fire that the soul went through for like purging. And then that got associated with the idea of hell. So fire is something of a cleansing nature as well too.
100%. It's like the phoenix rises out of the
dumpster.
Out of the dumpster. Out of the phoenix came out of the dumpster.
This fucking dumpster bird on fire just came out. God, I paid money to see that.
Yeah. So this episode is really about the dumpster fire bird.
You do you, bird.
Okay, in all seriousness.
But which is way more laughter than we've had on the last time we tried to record this episode.
Yes.
So I think it's already better.
Yeah. So there's, it is a heavy time. Like, super heavy, and people are scrambling, whether it's financially. And I think everyone's felt it on some level. I mean, financially, I don't know who's not feeling it right now, because the cost of like living, food up in Canada, it's crazy.
It's crazy here. Yeah.
Every system is being challenged so hard right now.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, it is almost to bombard you so much to the fact that like we are not separate from each other, and we're all going through this.
It's a wake-up call.
And to quote Ken Wilber, you can't spiritually evolve if you're not transcending and including. And that means from the highest to the lowest.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to push away, that's part of the problem. If you're leaning into your us and themness more, if you're feeling more like my tribe is right, these guys are idiots, maybe this is for you, you know, and maybe you're getting activated by all this crazy stuff that's going on, and you're feeling like you got to hunker down with the people who see the world the way that you do, but we're all in it together.
Yeah. It's like we're all going down in that dumpster.
Yeah. And we're all a fucking mullet flying bird just flying out.
Just waiting for the phoenix to save me.
It's all fucking coked out of its gourd. Turns out it's not a bird at all. It's just a raccoon on fire, on cocaine.
The trash panda.
That would be the greatest joke in spirit as well, too.
Yeah.
You think you're participating in this like truly mystical thing, and you find out that it's really not at all.
It's just a rhyme. It's just a
You just
trash panda.
made meaning on something else.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. I like making Natalie laugh.
Okay. So back to the shadows of the planet.
Yeah, I feel that the earth is held on to this stuff, just as the body is. It's very hard to be across from you while you're doing this. So
we're gonna have to cut this part out. Okay. Oh, I think I'm tired. Okay. We went from like the heaviest episode
to the weirdest.
to the most ridiculous, like bird on fire.
I mean, I'm pretty proud of it.
It's pretty good.
I would totally like drink coffee out of a mug that had that.
Okay.
Maybe this is why your guy was like, "Yeah, fucking do it. See what happens."
Okay. Okay.
But the earth has, very much like our body, right, has held on to this stuff. And the earth as its own physical body is letting go of this stuff to remind us of our own shadows, of the things that we need to integrate and the things that we've done to the planet and that we've done to each other.
Mm-hmm.
This is my frame, you know, doesn't have to be accepted.
No, I agree with that, because everything, you know, the expression, you know, we don't go out in nature, we are nature. Like we're not separate from the earth. Like her pain is our pain. Right. So we can't, I think there's this really beautiful, and let's pull out from the higher perspective for a moment and really look at this as a beautiful process that is absolutely necessary.
It is beautiful and it is ugly at the same time.
Just like dealing with your own trauma.
Yeah.
Super painful, uncomfortable. But if you look at like cycles of energy.
Think about the fucking burger.
You should draw that. It's like okay. So if you look at like cycles of energy, and I mean you can see this in nature, it's like from summer to winter, these are energetic shifts and changes. And you can
necessary shifts.
Yeah, absolutely. Death happens in the wintertime. It's part of what happens in the spring, everything rebirths. So if we look at the the earth in its whole entirety of existence, right? It's shifting and changing. And it's just like energetically, it's coming to an end with all these systems that are destroying her, right?
Yeah. And again, I think it's all of these systems that were put in place that made one person have to dominate another person.
Separation. Yeah.
Separation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just decide you're not going to think about it. Decide you're not going to laugh about it.
I know. Okay. Why is this episode so hard to do?
I mean, we're talking about some heavy shit.
Yeah.
I think before we got really into like the shadow of it,
Yeah.
and maybe this is where we start talking a little bit more about shadow. I don't know if we or if that's a separate episode in itself of like understanding shadow and potential within the shadow and things like that. But just as we're talking about the shadow emerging, right? That isn't necessarily a negative thing. It always appears to us as a negative thing immediately.
Yeah. And I think when we pull out from that higher perspective and see how this whole process is happening for us so that humanity can reimagine a very different world, and being pulled into the fear constantly is,
I think it's so easy to get pulled into that fear because I've heard a statistic that said like, I'm going to say I heard a statistic and then I'm not even going to quote it properly. So like I heard something somewhere that ever since September 11th, everything in the news had to be polarized to a point of like, it's the end of democracy and it's the soul of our nation. And it became this like leveling up of the news, that the news is never just like, yeah, we don't got anything going on today. Have a great day. Enjoy your loved ones.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time. It's got to be, how do we hook you in? How do we get you? And then you think about the stress response on your body operating from that fear state all the time. And then the signal that we're all collectively broadcasting out of, they're coming for us and it's us and them. And
yeah. And that's being in the fear, like being in these loops of fear constantly. This is where we get manipulated quite easily. Manipulated into believing that we are separate. Constantly. It's constantly reminding you that you are separate from everything else and that you have to
it's somebody else's problem. It's not yours.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and we're all in it together.
Mm-hmm. So going back to what I'm going to say is humanity's kind of awakening, it's really taking all of these systems that have been hidden on the back end for so long, operating kind of like the Truman Show. It's like Jim Carrey walking around thinking that life is perfect in this little town. And then he's like, throws a rock at the sky. He's like, oh shit, this isn't actually what my reality is. And then he starts seeing behind the scenes. So what we're starting to see behind the scenes is like how corrupt the world has been, like how disgustingly corrupt like all these systems have been.
Yeah.
And how they have been manipulating humanity and creating illness, separation, stagnancy, polluting the earth just for such criminal gain. Not many people have realized this in the last, like I'd say, maybe 40 years. It's now like you can't run from it. It's like, boom, right in your face.
You have to be blind and deaf to not notice it on some level. I think the hard part that I'm finding is even in the face of all the things that we're talking about, there is still so much dissonance that we are, and I caught myself almost saying like that I see people doing, but I notice myself doing it too. I'm part of the problem. The dissonance of not wanting to realize that reality is there, because the second you realize it's there, then that means you have to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much easier to go like la 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 la, like bring it back to the way that it was. I want to go back there. Like it doesn't happen. We can't go back there.
No.
There is no going back. This is it. This is where we are. This is where we're supposed to be. And if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Exactly. And that brings like an interesting, like something really powerful that I see where humanity is really going is that we're really stepping into our sovereignty.
Mhm.
Like, you know how we have so much polarity, and like refer back to episode number 7, middle ground, where, you know, we've got to really stop separating from people and judging, but actually tuning in and asking more questions and listening to our heart space, because we can't separate ourselves from anybody anymore.
Yeah. And the more you do the work, the harder it is to push other people away
No, we
like
can't.
that.
And
And,
so-
and on the other side, it feels very hopeful too that we're having this conversation, that people can hear this, that it can resonate with them, that they can feel it.
yeah. And I think that the more we're tuned in with ourselves and really what we're not projecting anymore. We're really tuning in and being
About the break.
We have a lot of edits in this episode.
I kind of like, I mean, I'm favorable because I made the joke, so I don't want to like cut it out. Because I wasn't allowing myself to go there, and then I went there and I was like, and then you made a joke, and then you tripled down on it. You didn't, you added a layer, you got her to laugh. Good for you. And then you went another step further.
Yeah. So bird the dumpster. Yeah.
The Phoenix in the dumpster.
Yeah. Phoenix.
As we're calling this episode, Phoenix in the dumpster.
Phoenix in the dumpster. Phoenix, she's gonna rise. That trash panda is gonna rise so high. But yes, back to the necessity of all of this happening. Being, you know, all of the discomfort that we're experiencing in our body, we're seeing in the what we call the kind of external world. It's a part of us. And the softer we can be and surrendering to what is and allowing, this is why I think it's incredibly important to have some type of practice where you are sitting with yourself. If you are not sitting with yourself at this point, you're going to get pulled into the fear, and you're going to not be able to discern what is mine and what is the collective.
Yes, which is a big part of our teaching that we learned was you have to be able to discern that static and the noise.
Right.
Because you have to be able to hear your own vibration. And as you get out and you start to interact with all these other frequencies, you might start thinking that that's you and that's your world. But when you start pulling those away, you come down to yourself and go, oh, that's not me. That's not me. That's a biological mechanism from my ancestors. That's the way I was programmed in my house.
Those are beliefs, constructs that were passed down to me. It's like every single construct in this world is literally crumbling. And this is where it gets really exciting, because in order for anything like new energy to come in, everything has to die. So we have to see a death and like a death process. But
so I've heard some podcasts, probably in Aubrey Marcus, where they're talking about like being a death doula to this stage.
Yeah. Like,
and then a life doula for the next one.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to look at it. Like, we fear death so much, right? We fear, and we grip, the ego grips. And this is where we're constantly in this like loop of fear, is our ego, which is separate. It's gripping so hard to these old systems because it's what we know. But by allowing ourselves to come back into our heart more, recognizing that our ego is very much involved in fear and separation, and being within the self and allowing and witnessing, yes, it's really hard. It's not like you're just going to bypass and ignore what is happening on the planet, but trying really hard to stay within yourself and discerning, okay, that's the collective fear. what's my fear? Tuning into your own discomfort gives you the opportunity to alchemize your own pain, which in turn alchemizes the collective pain, so that you have the space within you to reimagine, and you can redirect your focus.
And you're choosing the reality.
Yeah, and we're like recreating that new reality.
So, you know, we could keep drinking from the fear porn well. What's inspiring you when you're alive in this moment and today? Like, what inspires you with what you see?
The earth. Like when I am outside, and this is another thing, we have lost such connection with the earth. Like we don't like. Have you ever heard this? There's a new disorder called nature deficit disorder.
No.
They're starting to diagnose children with this. Children who have no concept of like where their food comes from. They're literally not. They're indoors all day, and they have no connection to any circadian rhythm. And getting out in nature, for me, what's so inspiring is that she provides everything, right? She's such a healer in herself. So for me, it's inspiring to be outside and in nature, which is kind of ridiculous because we are nature. So what I get really excited about is I start to see how all of these little communities are coming together in different ways to support the earth, that people are choosing to live off the land more, be back in connection with nature. Like this is something that has been so lost.
Yeah, it makes me laugh thinking like, if you were to bring somebody from a few hundred years ago to talk to somebody today, and they're both talking about the problems.
Like you're lost.
Yeah,
they're like, go outside, get some sunlight, and put your feet on the earth. That's what they would say. Like that's medicine. That's earth medicine, right? So it's so crazy that we've gotten to this point where we are in these really inorganic environments. Like completely disconnected from nature. Most people, like kids, don't have an idea where their food comes from. Like,
and they want everything now.
Yeah, everything is just Amazon. Like it's
this augmented reality.
Yeah.
That we think we're living in, and I think for me, you were talking about rhythms, and I love that you're talking about rhythms because I think as humans, we ourselves don't allow ourselves to feel like you feel the four seasons. You think you do. You know, you go out, you take pictures of pumpkins and all that shit that comes with the fall. But I'm saying like we don't engage with it within our own lives of like, oh, this is a time that I need to be slowing down.
Yeah.
I need to be relaxing. I need to be resting more, hibernating, going into the darkness more.
Yeah.
I don't think we look at it like that. So I think we live in this augmented reality where we
like a Truman Show.
Like the Truman Show.
Yeah.
And we think that we're separate from nature. And the problem is we think that we're separate from nature. We've fallen out of these cycles internally. You know, we honor them in a celebratory way when we get our lattes, our pumpkin spice lattes and shit.
Yeah.
But like we don't honor it on the internal side of it. And we fall out of sync with that. And then we live in these skyscrapers and these structures, and we think that we're separate from nature.
Yeah, we've got our heat. And like think about like people don't get cold anymore. They don't go out in the winter. If they do, it's like there's no cold exposure, which is so good for you.
Yeah, I hear that, and also like I fucking hate being cold.
Yeah, so I'm cold right now. I don't like being cold, but
I talk out of both sides of my mouth on this podcast.
But I think we're seeing people are just done with these shitty systems. Like the school system's breaking down. After COVID, people started homeschooling. They're like, wow, I have more connection with my kid. Like he or she is learning more. So I think people are already starting to reimagine very different ways and pulling the plug on all these systems. And that's where I think where we need to focus on our energy, because these new earth systems are already here. They're happening. And it's a matter of you choosing, do I want to cling to the old systems and, you know, be in that dumpster fire with that crazy phoenix bird and just
It sounds like a party.
like be in fear and go down that path because it's going to die? Or do you want to pivot, listening deeply more to yourself, your body, what's in connection with nature, and see that there's so many more opportunities popping up? I see lots of opportunities.
Well, that's great. And I think it's fascinating to me because in leadership circles now,
Mm-hmm.
more than ever, you're hearing more people say, like, we don't know what the future looks like.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the idea that, like, the leader has to lead and we have to guide and we have to give people, like,
No, the people, every single human being has to reimagine what their future looks like on planet Earth.
totally. And it's reactivating a power within yourself as opposed to giving it to a leader to say, oh, you get us to where we need to go. It's you activating that leader superpower within yourself. And I think the reason why shit looks so, I mean, it's crazy right now. But it's because we're understanding the interconnectivity of everything and the messiness.
Finally.
Yeah, finally, but also, like, it's going to activate a lot of scarcity programming because everything is so connected, right? The politics is connected to the school, connected to this, connected to that. And as you start to do that, just like you're unraveling a wound, it's going to get messy. And I think we have to have the space and the grace for ourselves to kind of allow that. And we also have to, like, call out stuff when we see it from a loving, compassionate spot, because we're all going to have to do this together, and we can't push people away and make people the enemy. And again, it's, if you're really doing that, you're not looking within yourself enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the true hard part about being on the spiritual path is the more you go down it, the harder it is to look at somebody and be like, they're fucking doing this. You're like, it's activating some part within me that I don't feel that I'm enough, right? And that's the hard part, is committing to yourself to do the work, meeting yourself where you are, and not rushing the process we were talking about.
Yeah. And again, I think we're seeing a lot more of the divine feminine energy coming in through the heart space. And this is what, I mean, Mama Earth is just feminine.
So I'm gonna push on that a little bit.
Okay.
Because I was listening to Iron John, which is about the wild man.
Okay.
Finding and embracing the archetypal wild man,
Mm-hmm.
more masculine literature.
Right.
And he was saying, when we codify things as the sky father and the earth mother, we forget about the divine balance within both.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
So and I know you can hear that.
I like everything in nature embodies both masculine and feminine. We just, when I say Earth, I think Mama Earth. Like, it's that she provides, supports, nurtures, right?
I look at it as like mother of the penis.
But so we're seeing a lot more of that divine feminine energy coming in, where people are looking at the shadow and the darkness, and that is feminine.
It is.
So, and she's roaring. She is fucking screaming right now. Screaming. And I think it's humanity's, like, biggest wake up call is to finally listen.
And for me, like, not to get too out there, but like I can speak from my own experience of what I feel into within my own spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, we're being called to be catalyzed to be something greater than ourselves.
Absolutely.
And this is our time to rise to be the people that we know we can be. But we're not going to be able, as Einstein said, when solving a problem, you have to use a different, you have to elevate your consciousness. You have to have a new form of consciousness. You can't have the same consciousness that caused that problem.
Yeah.
And consciousness business is messy.
Mm-hmm.
Allow for some of that.
Yeah. And that's, I think people are really afraid of that.
Well, because it's tied to the financial systems and everything.
Yeah.
Like it's tied to everything, right? You're tied to your food, it's tied to finances, and you're like, well, my money is essentially a digital bank account number that can just be wiped out in a minute, right? Like that is a crazy thought in itself. But it's tied to this, and it's tied to the house, and it's all right. It's all together. It's all together.
Just like it is, and you look at like a wound in an onion. It's happening in layers, and there is a divine unfolding.
Yeah.
So from this perspective, yeah, it's tough when you get pulled into the fear, but take a step out of the fear. And I think the homework for today's episode is really
have a fucking laugh.
Have a laugh at what's happening. Have a laugh. Picture the phoenix.
Not at someone else's expense.
No, but you can laugh at the phoenix in the dumpster fire. Or I think like posing the question is like, how do I discern what is mine and what is the collective?
How do you do that in your own practice?
Well, for me, if I'm kind of spinning out in like an activated state, and oftentimes, more so than often, there's been like a natural disaster or something where I have to check myself and come back to my body. I have to check myself, come back to my body. You can do that through breath work, but it's like coming back to your body, coming back to your body, coming back to your body, and coming back to the present moment. That's, for me, that's how I discern. Okay, that's not mine. I gotta come back to myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to help ground people in their I am.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the homework, but we also have the why behind the homework. And this is, if you're not doing these grounding practices in whatever way they come to you, that you embody that grounded sense, you're not going to be able to show up as effectively as you want for other people, because you're going to be running around thinking that, somebody says, I'm on fire, and you're going to start thinking you're on fire too.
Yeah.
And, you need to put out some fires internally and put out some fires externally.
Yeah.
So everything we do in the podcast is to truly bring people back to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we're talking about this, because you could very easily get lost in all this, and you have right reason to. You'd say like, yeah, it's an unprecedented time. But I'd also say like, you're being called to be grounded more than ever.
Mm-hmm. I think every human's being called. We're being initiated hard. Yeah. And I think we can look at it from the doomsday perspective and think like, oh my God, get all scarce and try to, hoard our money, whatever it is that you're doing out of fear. But we can also move into our hearts and start to reimagine, like, what does this world look like where everybody's a part of it?
Yeah, and everybody wins.
Yeah, that's like, and people are like, oh, that would never happen. But no, it will happen.
Yeah.
I hope I can see it in my lifetime.
I think we're laying the infrastructure for it.
I think so.
It's a fun, exciting time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go down that spiritual rabbit hole, well, you chose to incarnate at this moment.
Totally. You're here for, like, it's wild that you chose to be here.
Yeah. And you're hearing this message, and hopefully it's resonating with you.
Mm-hmm. So again, homework, just really, when you're getting pulled into whatever disaster is happening on the planet, first of all, we hope that
or in your work life, or
your work life, romantic life. This could be relational to whatever it is. Give yourself some space and time to actually ask the question: is this mine, or is this somebody else's? Is this outside of me?
And I cut you off, and you were saying we hope that you're safe.
Yes, that's first and foremost. So yeah, share this. We'd love to hear from you. Join us on the Instagram page, and Alex and I will be kind of jamming more about the homework and stuff.
Yeah, we love it. We love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Huffing Spirit Podcast. Remember, you are your own teacher. Take what resonates and leave the rest. For more info, follow us on Instagram at Huffing Spirit Podcast and subscribe on Spotify or iTunes. Bye for now.